Frieren, an anime so big and beloved that it now sits atop the list of highest rated anime ever, and it did so by breaking every rule shonen was supposed to follow. Today I'm going to talk about 4 things they did that go against conventional shonen storytelling, yet paid off brilliantly, how the series changed how I view stories, and why the entire anime industry should be on notice going forward. The first thing I want to talk about, because I find it the most fascinating, is how Frieren redefines heroism in shonen. Historically, being a shonen hero has been about the big moments, like defeating the big bad, saving people from disaster, or just shouting a lot. Frieren takes the notion that big moments make a hero and completely turns that on its head. It shows the value in the small moments and how those impact lives, which is cool because that mirrors Frieren's story too. She is someone who is learning the beauty of the little things herself throughout the series. While she's one example of this, there is a far better one, and that's Himmel. We start his story after his biggest triumph, and he dies in the first episode, yet somehow he's still the most important character in the world of Frieren throughout the entire series. The impact he's had on not just Frieren, but society is always present. People gravitate to the Himmel character naturally, but many don't know why, and I think I've figured it out. There's a saying, people don't remember what you do, they remember how you make them feel. I think this perfectly describes Himmel. Wait, hold on. What do you mean people don't remember what you do? Himmel defeated the Demon King. That's his biggest claim to fame. You're right, he did, but so did Frieren. Every time we enter a new village or town, everyone knows and talks about Himmel the hero. Not only from the many statues, but little stories as well, like a little girl he saved who's now elderly but never forgot what he did. One of the things that bugged me on my first watch of the show is that people don't recognize Frieren everywhere she goes as well. She's a living legend. Someone please give this girl some attention. I don't think anyone she doesn't know personally ever identifies her immediately, but she's part of the party who defeated the Demon King too, right? Why don't people recognize her? It's because of that adage. She did great things, but her reserved nature didn't allow her to connect with others on an emotional level, so despite her accolades and her constant travels, her legacy doesn't measure up. This isn't the only example either. Remember the other elf that popped up for a bit, Croft? He has no doubt accomplished amazing feats. He had to, right? He has statues built of him as well. Guess what? Not even the people in that village remember who he was. He literally asks Frieren if she's heard of him, and she says no. There's a decent chance you might not have remembered his name yourself. This is the difference between Himmel and Frieren or Croft. Everywhere he went, he made people feel something worth remembering, and they didn't. It's especially cool because throughout the series, that's exactly what Frieren ends up doing this time around. It's not like Himmel is perfect either. He makes the mistake of letting the demon child live, and it causes havoc in the village. We see the playful vanity he has channeling his inner fashion model while posing for all these statues being built in his honor. He couldn't pull the sword out of the stone, which is a perfect subversion to the hero trope. The fact that he isn't perfect is what makes what he does so much more powerful. He notices Frieren's strengths when no one in ages had. He motivated her, and the same way he made her feel special, he did for everyone he met. On the surface, it may seem generic, but it's fleshed out so well you can't help but feel inspired. Winning big fights doesn't make you a hero. Being there when you're needed, no matter how big or small the moment, that's being a hero. This slowly being revealed throughout the course of the season as opposed to showing it all at once really builds up his aura too, and revealing the timeline starting with his death is a small detail but adds to it as well. However, redefining heroism is only the first thing Frieren does that makes it stand out. The next is another that's equally fascinating, and that's changing the perception of what a great fight is. The best way I can put it is less is more. I always thought the best fights were long, drawn-out spectacles with big personal stakes involved, and I don't think I'm the only one who believed that. A shonen is often defined by its action, and Frieren is one largely lacking in action. So in some of the most powerful moments I saw in the span of a year were 2 single strikes by Stark, a barrier shattering, and a fight ending in 1 line, I was baffled and I didn't understand it. Then I realized, if you build the story up well enough, you don't need a ton of action to make it stand out. I loved Stark taking out the dragon because we saw him overcome his fear, and taking out the demon because it leaned into his insecurities about himself and his master. Frieren telling Ara to end it was amazing because the whole episode was built around the ruse of hiding her ability and why that was important. All of these stories had me enthralled, so when they hit their climax moment, only a single scene was needed. When you're that efficient with your storytelling, this helps the visuals as well, because when you're only animating action for a few scenes as opposed to entire episodes, you can really make the important ones breathtaking, and they do. You can call it the anti-map away. It's also completely changed how I view the storytelling of a fight. Lots of stories use action as a crutch, and Frieren uses it as a complement to enhance its story. That's how you get breaking down a barrier for a test as one of the coolest moments of the year. That's 2 down. Let's get to number 3, the show's usage of demons. Okay, demons are not new to anime. Hell, I'm using them in my own manga. There has also been lots of debate over how they handled them, but I liked it and I thought it felt remarkably fresh. They again went a different direction and did something outside of what we see in so many series today. Demons in the world of Frieren are essentially the highest forms of predators. They are animals that have adapted to seem civil, but only in an effort to manipulate the emotions of humans. Emotions they do not share because that's their nature, just like that ex of yours. Using language as a trained habit makes so much sense and was a unique angle that makes them feel vastly different from other series. It also adds to the history of the world. We see that best with Qual. Just as demons adapted to the language of humans over time, humans adapted to the techniques of demons over time. Zoltrak was the ultimate technique during Qual's time, but as decades passed, it became a generic attack spell, because of course it would. That's how history works, and you see that again when Frieren talks about humans. They continue to evolve with each generation, passing down the knowledge of those who came before them. Okay, this last one is kind of cheating, and it's not really something Frieren changed or did super differently, but it is something I do want to highlight because of how well it's done and how infrequently it's utilized. Kind of piggybacking off of 1 and 2, what Frieren does that most shonen don't is constantly add meaning to the world around them. One of the most memorable stories of the year was the 10 minutes we spent with Old Man Full. That's all it took. And for someone notoriously awful at remembering names, his is ingrained in my memory permanently. I nearly teared up at a scene where all that's happening is Frieren is eating steak because of the meaning behind the meal. Those are my 2 favorite examples, but literally every episode has something. It almost seems like they split it up into half continue the plot and half grab your heart. It's crazy. This isn't limited to Frieren, but they do a phenomenal job with the characters too. Stark's story of cowardice and thinking he's a failure. Heiter as the drunk, faithful priest who grows increasingly concerned with his own mortality as he grows older. Aizen as a stoic and powerful dwarf who may be the most fearful character in the series but chooses to keep fighting. Fern is basically Heiter's final gift to Frieren. Denkin stands out every time he's on screen. Obviously, we can't forget everyone's favorite baddie, Ubel, someone whose gimmick fascinates me and represents a really unique take on belief. Then, of course, Frieren herself. Seeing things from her perspective makes everything more powerful as we see how little she changes, but how much everything around her does. The world around her fades, yet she continues on. The regret she feels taking that for granted, and that she didn't do more to learn about those she cared about better, simply adds more beauty to it all. Ironically, despite it being a fantasy story about a 1,000-year-old magical elf, it's one of the most relatable, humanizing shonen I've ever seen. If you're a storyteller, take note, because this is how you stand out. I haven't talked about all of them, but these are some of the most important reasons to me why Frieren changed everything. With that, I'm out.